That was some nice wind, thank you. Revenge.
Oh, it's just that kind of night.
Hello, and welcome to episode 95 of Rhythm Encounter, the RPG fan music podcast. I'm your host, Mike Salbato, and today, in honor of Halloween, which just so happens to be the day you're probably listening to this, we're going to be listening to some Castlevania music. So I am excited about this topic. And I think I'm not the only one. Although if I am, that's going to be really embarrassing when I introduce Mike Sollosi.
Hey, that's me.
And Wes Iliff.
Hello there.
How are you both doing?
Great.
Dandy.
I love October. I love the weather. I love the Halloween season, which begins around, say, September 3rd. And there's no better way to celebrate the center of the Venn diagram of Halloween vibes and RPG music that is Castlevania.
I've been gorging on a non-stop feed of spooky stories, spooky games, spooky movies, and I'm ready to bring that all together here.
I'm so glad you said that. There was a part of me was definitely worried you were going to say candy corn.
It was a possibility.
We don't need to talk about candy corn.
I don't have anything kind to say about candy corn. I'm sorry.
Yeah, my family loves me enough to not let me have it in the house.
I'm sure we've talked about it in Slack. I am somewhere in the middle where I'm like, oh, I hate it, but then if it's there, I'm like, well, I'm gonna have it a little bit. And then I'm tired of it.
Now, on Halloween, my house gives out Reese's Cups, Snickers bars, and Kasugai gummies, and that's it.
Oh, you must be popular.
I do just fine.
I mean, if I was trick-or-treating in your neighborhood, you would definitely be the Reese's house. I'd be like, make sure you always go there.
It's like the gold mine of the trick-or-treating.
When I was growing up, there was a house that was about half a block from mine. I lived in a dense suburb in Virginia. And one very nice elderly lady every year made hot sugar donuts.
Oh, gosh.
And she was the most popular woman in the neighborhood. I don't think any Halloween prankster would dare TP her house because the donut lady was well known in the neighborhood.
Oh, that's fantastic. I love that.
I loved that too, until I stopped trick-or-treating around age. Oh, I don't know. When did I stop?
34.
I wish. I moved out of my parents' house when I was 23, so no. But I was 22.
Yeah, I would have stopped trick-or-treating once I could stop getting those donuts.
Yeah, I mean, like you can't top that. Like, I'm gonna go out on top.
And they were homemade, handmade cinnamon sugar donuts, and they were wonderful. But
that's amazing.
I don't remember if you can pick up donuts in any of the Castlevania games. You can definitely get whole chickens, but I don't remember donuts.
There's so many food options. Yeah, there's so many food options. I'd have to imagine there might be a donut, or at least an eclair or something.
In Bloodstained, which is Castlevania in all but name, there's a whole cooking system, so I think there's a whole range of pastries there. But let's see. Donuts.
I'd eat an eclair I found in a wall.
Castlevania.
Yeah, I'm not proud.
Donuts are common desserts in Castlevania Harmony of Despair.
Oh.
And what a coincidence. that game might come up later.
Specifically that one, huh? Interesting. Of all the ones in the series.
Yep, that's chocolate, strawberry, and plain donuts, only in that Castlevania game.
I did want to ask a little bit, like, before we fully get into the music, like, I figured since we're here talking about Castlevania, let's start with Sollosi, like, do you have a favorite Castlevania?
Yes, I have two favorites. I think the traditional and nostalgic favorite for me is Symphony of the Night for the PlayStation. It's extremely important to what Castlevania is, and that game is sort of weird and beautiful and cool even many years later. I don't play it like every year, but I replay that game every 2 or 3 years, usually around Halloween. But I think that as that formula, like, they experimented with it and changed it in the following 15 years or so, I think that my other favorite is Order of Ecclesia for the DS. Those are the two: Symphony of the Night and Order of Ecclesia.
Okay. How about you, Wes?
I've got a lot of love for Symphony of the Night, like you said, the nostalgia pick. But for me, Aria of Sorrow took like everything that Symphony of the Night did that I loved and cranked it up. I can't resist that game. I can't resist the really unique weapons that you can play with in there, and the story kind of coming forward a little bit more from time to time. And I adore that game.
I replayed Aria of Sorrow earlier this year on the Advanced Collection, and it absolutely held up. That game's amazing.
I've got a playthrough going right now because, I wasn't going to pass up an opportunity.
'Tis the season.
Exactly.
It's true. Well, mine is definitely Lament of Innocence. No, I'm just kidding. Okay,
I was gonna treat that answer seriously, but I really didn't want to offend you.
No.
Be nice.
Don't worry. I mean, I own it because I was excited at the idea when it came out, and I'm like, oh, this isn't. It's not Castlevania 64, but it's also not Symphony of the Night. So yes, I mean, Symphony of the Night is also my favorite, but I definitely have good memories of Aria of Sorrow for the same reason. I like the variety of weapons in that, and I think some of the other GBA games also got kind of weird with the weapons, and that was fun. Just some of the different systems they came out with on the GBA games were very enjoyable. I think I fell off somewhere in the DS era because I don't think I have Order of Ecclesia, but the way you guys are talking about it, like I guess I should get on that.
Yeah, the 3 GBA games and 3 DS games were sort of the peak of my Castlevania fandom, because there was a new one coming out every 1 or 2 years, and it was exciting and awesome every time. And they basically reinvent a system or something about Castlevania in each of those games. Like no two of them are really the same in how they handle things, including Dawn of Sorrow, which is a direct sequel to Aria of Sorrow, but brings back the soul system, but adds a crazy like glyph drawing system on the DS lower screen. But so like if you just play the 7 Metroidvania style Castlevania games that RPG Fan covers, which is Symphony of the Night through Order of Ecclesia, then maybe throw in a Harmony of Despair as an addendum there, like that is an experience. That whole oeuvre is 7 or more excellent games that have different strengths and weaknesses that are just among the best sort of games of their kind of that time. And that's why I love Castlevania is the union of the like the spookiness and the weirdness and the music, but also just being like my favorite new thing every couple of years on my Nintendo handheld of the moment.
Yeah, I think it was the release schedule that really got to me. Like I enjoyed it, and like I couldn't finish them fast enough before I got the next one. But I do appreciate what you said. I appreciate that it wasn't just like they weren't churning them out, and it wasn't the same game every couple of years. Like they did do something different with each one, which is cool.
I can lend you any of those DS games if you haven't played them.
I mean, you've talked to me enough that you're not going to be shocked in any way when I say this, but I'm pretty sure I own them all. Maybe. I don't know about Ecclesia, but I at least have 1 or 2 of the DS ones. So I appreciate it, but I'll see. Yeah. I remember when Aria of Sorrow was announced, I think one of the first things people kept talking about was like, hold on. We have a Castlevania protagonist wearing jeans. What's happening here?
It's also the most recent Castlevania by far, because it takes place in, I think, the 2030s.
Oh yeah, right.
Yeah. So it's the only future Castlevania.
Still,
and yeah, because we know who the Belmont of 1999 is, and then Soma was the next protagonist after that. There hasn't been any Castlevania in that part of the timeline since.
All right. I had it in my notes to talk about Halloween traditions and asking you, but like we talked about candy and stuff anyway, so we sort of covered that. But if anyone has any current Halloween traditions you want to talk about, like, you know, do you do anything or besides watching scary movies and stuff like that?
Nothing that fancy for me. I usually play the soundtrack of The Nightmare Before Christmas.
Yes.
And I'll sit playing a handheld game near the TV so I can give out candy easily to the children in my neighborhood. I live in an area of townhouses that does have a significant number of kids. So I don't go to a party or anything usually, because I just try to be a good local citizen. But you know, video games, candy. Nothing terribly fancy. Sometimes that video game is a Castlevania game.
Seasonally appropriate. I've got kids, so most of my traditions anymore are based around them. I mean, I take them trick-or-treating, or I stay home and hand out the candy. Usually we hand off halfway through. There are so many kids in this neighborhood that we ran out last year, our first year here for Halloween. So we're stocking up big time this year.
Awesome. I don't really have one at the moment. You know, for a long time it was handing out candy and stuff like that. And then I moved across the country, and obviously the last like 3 Halloweens have all been very different from each other. So, all we'll share is my favorite short Halloween story from the last few years. Because I don't think we're going back to this friend of a friend's Halloween party. But one of my favorite things that's happened on Halloween is, and some of my close friends know this story, but most people listening to this have never heard it. But there was again, friend of friend, and their friends were all there, and a bunch of people had kids that were there, and it was really cute. Everyone was in costume. And my favorite thing that has stuck with me for like at least 3 years now from this party was someone's little daughter. I'm not sure how old she was, 4 or 5. She was dressed as Peppa Pig, and it was adorable. And all we could do was talk about how adorable her little costume was. And then at some point, we looked over, and the only snack that this little girl was pulling off of the snack tray was the salami. And I didn't even have words for it. And just like, I would just look over at Hillary. I'm like, Peppa Pig's eating the salami again. Should we tell her?
I like to think that she knew, and that child had a really strong grasp.
I think she probably did.
See, like that was the horror element that the little girl like was like subversively put into her character. It's like, yeah, I'm gonna be Peppa Pig, but this is Peppa Pig eating her parents.
Oh my God, that's a dark angle I never considered, but now I will never forget.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Well, now we're back into like, you know, the dark gothic mood, so we can talk about Castlevania.
Dovetails nicely.
It does. All right. So since there's 3 of us, we have 6 tracks today. We cover a pretty broad range of titles. Only one Symphony of the Night song, despite it being all of our favorites, but that's also because it's the one game in the series that has appeared on the show 5 or 6 times in the past. So that's fair.
I went and looked at it. There's been 7 Castlevania tracks in the show in the past, and 6 of them are from Symphony of the Night.
Felt like it might be too obvious.
It's one of those things, like I talk about this, you know, sometimes Zach especially, like Zach will come on the show sometimes and be like, I know this is an obvious choice. And it's like, well, yes, but if it's never been on the show, then it's obviously not obvious enough. And also, like, we couldn't do this episode not have at least one from Symphony. Like, it just wouldn't make any sense, you know?
Oh yeah. Totally understand.
Yeah. Not to give away our first track, but hey, Wes, what is our first track?
Well, I was not afraid of the obvious this time around. And the first track that I chose was Dracula's Castle from, funny enough, Castlevania Symphony of the Night.
And then, Sollosi, you have the song after that.
That's right. My first pick for this episode is Invitation of a Crazed Moon from Castlevania Portrait of Ruin for the DS.
Awesome. All right, let's go listen to Dracula's Castle and Invitation of a Crazed Moon.
So I think that Castlevania as a series, maybe more than any other series that I can think of, focuses on the strength of an opening soundtrack, an opening song. It really sets the mood for the game. The song that plays when you first enter the castle, or first explore the outskirts. And Dracula's castle might be the most iconic. It's this interesting combination of the tragic feel, the tragic gothic feel that perfectly encapsulates Alucard having to go slay his own father, which is, kind of an undercurrent of the entire game. But also it hits those rock beats that Castlevania loves so well, so that when you come in, you instantly feel like, okay, this is an action game. Things are moving quicker because the soundtrack is so driving. Even though the combat and action aren't necessarily that fast-paced in Symphony of the Night, at least not at first, but you feel like it just because of that soundtrack hitting so hard. It might be one of the best mood setters in the entire series for my money. Up there with Vampire Killer, Bloody Tears.
So yeah, I agree. I think iconic is the best way to describe that song. It's such a strong introduction. It's this game's second introduction, but whatever. But like the moment that song starts, like every time I hear it now, because I've played the game and I know that intro in that game so much, like I'm back in that like hallway, that dark hallway when Alucard's like jumping over the drawbridge as it closes, and just that the visuals like, go along with the music so well. When you go in, everything's dark and you have just the light from the windows behind you, and then like as the lights come up, the song swells. It's so good. It all works so well together. And then the energy of the song too is so perfect, because at the very beginning, for a sadly brief period, you're very overpowered. You're way stronger than you're supposed to be at the beginning of a game, but it works well with the energy of the song. Part of me wishes the song was longer, outside of it looping in the game or whatever, but I think maybe the fact that it is kind of a fleeting thing makes it better for what it's trying to accomplish.
Yeah, to me, Dracula's Castle is a classic, like first or second level of a Castlevania game where it's just storming the castle. Like you have a Belmont or Alucard, as it were, doing the Belmont strut. Because you rarely can dash early on in the Castlevania game, just strutting through the castle hall, whipping skeletons and bats. And Castlevania music, even dating back to the arcade and NES days, was always like a little bit gothic and creepy, but also sort of rock influenced and having upbeat forward momentum to the songs, especially the energetic songs like a Stage 1 song. And so there's and because Michiru Yamane loves rock drums and guitar, that like there is guitar and rock drums in this one. But my favorite part of the song is actually the sort of ending counter melody where the violins go like that is such an infectious syncopated rhythm that I never get tired of it. It's awesome. The whole song's awesome.
Yeah, so we can talk about it being an obvious choice or whatever, but at the same time, it's an important song.
Would have felt bad if it wasn't on there.
Exactly. It was a perfect way to start things off today. So I originally had a different song here, and then I noticed or remembered that this next song is also an intro, or at least I think it is.
Yes, Invitation of a Crazed Moon is a opening castle hallway type song from Portrait of Ruin. But you might notice that it's not a Michiru Yamane track. Portrait of Ruin is perhaps famously the one Castlevania game that Yuzo Koshiro did several tracks for. And Invitation of a Crazed Moon is a really fun, energetic, like opening castle hallway track, but it has, I think, a rather infectious bass part to it that is, not unlike a Yuzo Koshiro bass that you would hear in a Streets of Rage or an ActRaiser, and that's just undeniably funky, and Koshiro is inspired by electronic music very heavily. So Invitation of a Crazed Moon still has these the gothic strings and moodiness you would associate with Castlevania, but also a very funky bass that I love every time. And plus just the novelty of having Yuzo Koshiro Castlevania soundtrack, I couldn't resist putting him on this episode somehow.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you did. I forgot that he was even like, contribute to one of these games. And also, it's it's a rare song today that isn't composed by Yamane. It definitely has an interesting sound that, like, I mean, this is only descriptive if you know both composers, but I wrote in my notes, like, it's the sound that you would expect from something that the two of them worked on, which doesn't really describe anything about the song, again, unless you understand what that means. But it has that, gothy Castlevania sound, but also this, cool, like, adventurous sound, whatever an adventurous sound means. But, like, Koshiro is so good at that. And I don't know if you noticed this. I mean, you probably know it because, Sollosi, you just know things. I did not know it because I was looking this up today, but the soundtrack to this game, and I think this and Order of Ecclesia, so I'm not sure if all the DS ones have this, but the soundtrack has 2 discs, and there's one disc that's the original game version, and then one is called, like, one's called game and one's called, like, original, but they're, slightly arranged versions of the music.
Yeah, it's not all of disc 2, at least not for Order of Ecclesia's case, but both of them will have several second arrangements of key songs in the second disc. I think for Order of Ecclesia, it's around 2 discs and around 55 tracks, but like the last 10 or 15 tracks are arranged versions. But there are a lot of the time second arrangements of Castlevania songs on the original soundtracks.
Yeah. So, like, this one, and I'm not sure which is the case because I looked a little bit online, and I don't know if it was because of the way they're labeled as original, like if the disc 2 is the actual song and then the ones in the game were kind of like, toned down or like made to work with the DS hardware. I read it on Portrait of Ruin that it might be the other way, where it's like it was composed for the DS first and then kind of like enhanced a little bit in this 2. So I don't know. I think the one we're playing on here is going to be the disc 2 version. I didn't notice a huge difference like in this particular song. I think I found what I think is the original or the game version, and it's like a little more tinny, I guess, like what you would think out of a DS or a GBA. I
haven't listened to every arrangement on the Portrait of Ruin soundtrack, but I definitely singled out this track because it was Koshiro and because of that bass was what drew me the strongest.
Yeah, that bass gave me something that I hadn't really heard much of in Castlevania, which is like putting a little bit of funk in there. Usually there's like almost gospel-y music mixed with hard rock, but man, having kind of a funky through line and almost like a few parts that feel like danceable, a little poppy and whatnot, like that feels wholly unique, and it still feels like a Castlevania song. That's incredible.
That is Yuzo Koshiro to a T. I mean, if you listen to any of the Wengan Midnight game soundtracks, which is just straight up like high-powered Eurobeat. Like he loves club music and electronic music, and that bleeds into his game compositions a lot. But I didn't learn that he was on Portrait of Ruin soundtrack until years after I had played the game, and so just sharing that fun discovery with everyone here was a treat for me. Thank you.
No, I mean, thank you. I'm glad you did too, because just to cap off my like little trivia thing here, I don't know if you looked this up, but if you look up this album, because Konami does have several Castlevania soundtracks on Apple Music and Spotify. For some reason, they have the entire soundtrack except for Koshiro's 5 songs.
Oh.
And I don't know why. I mean, I assume it's a licensing thing because isn't it always with music? But it's very strange because it's one of those ones where there's a lot of these older games have like many different translations of titles. So I was like, oh, I wonder what they, what is it listed under on Apple Music? And I'm like, that's weird. This song isn't there. And then I noticed that exactly 5 songs were missing, and Koshiro did exactly 5 songs on this album. So very strange that those are removed. I couldn't find anyone talking about it, like why those ones were.
I'm sure that's it. And maybe a brief explainer is in order. We've mentioned Michiru Yamane multiple times on this podcast already. She was the signature Castlevania composer from Symphony of the Night through to when they stopped making this the series in the early 2010s. She was the lead composer for Symphony of the Night and 2 of the GBA ones and all 3 of the DS ones. But making it sort of come full circle here, the first Castlevania game she worked on was Castlevania Bloodlines for the Sega Genesis in 1994. So Symphony of the Night wasn't her first Castlevania soundtrack, but Portrait of Ruin, this one here, is a sequel to Bloodlines. So she even brought. I don't think Koshiro did that for Invitation of a Crazed Moon, but there are some Bloodlines motifs and at least one remix in Portrait of Ruin, which I thought was a very cool touch.
That is cool. I didn't actually realize those two are related.
I believe that the main character, one of the two main characters, is a descendant of one of the main characters in Bloodlines, and one of the main characters of Bloodlines visits you as a ghost and is sort of your guardian through the game. So it's like one generation later, but it is a direct sequel to Bloodlines.
Ah, that's so cool. All right. Well, I guess you taught me with trivia then. Unless it's news to you that the other missing song in Digital Castlevania is I Am the Wind from Symphony of the Night, which is not available on Apple Music.
Yeah, that's a little bit... it is still weird to me that this dark gothic rock opera of a video game ends with like a smooth jazz song. It's so weird and incongruous.
It is. Maybe that's why they're like, this doesn't make any sense. Let's just not include it anymore.
Probably they just didn't have the rights for the singer, I guess.
I'm sure.
But it's still weird that it exists.
Yeah, I like it in its weird way, but it's so strange. Anyway, I think we're ready to go into block 2. So I have not played Curse of Darkness. I'm curious what everyone's thoughts are going to be on Curse of Darkness, because I understand generally the reputation it has. But my next song is either called Cordova Town or A Town Called Cordova from Castlevania Curse of Darkness on PS2. And then Sollosi, your next track is after that.
That's right. My second track for the episode is Wandering the Crystal Blue from Castlevania Order of Ecclesia, which I mentioned earlier. This episode is basically tied to be my favorite Castlevania game. And unlike my previous one, this is from Michiru Yamane.
Awesome. All right, let's go listen to A Town Called Cordova and Wandering the Crystal Blue. Okay, let's address this quickly first. I'm sure I'm not the only one that thought this, but is there any chance that the opening and the first 40 seconds of this song are not inspired by or a riff on Enter Sandman by Metallica? No? Is it just me?
Possibly. I mean, but they're not the only song that has like sort of an open strumming of a guitar that way.
Okay, I don't know. It has a really similar sound to me.
There are some older Castlevania games that do have sort of a similar opening riff. Maybe those were inspired by Metallica, and then this came from there. Because Curse of Darkness is the second PS2 game in the Castlevania series, so it would have come after the GBA games.
True.
Maybe also after Dawn of Sorrow. Yeah.
It felt to me almost like a modern Western.
Ah. Okay.
You know, the march into town theme, like that opening.
Which maybe is the idea, since you are going into a town. So, I don't know. Okay, well, either way, I enjoy the introduction. The drums and the cymbals crashing as the guitar comes in. I think it's just a great introduction to the song. And then it's, after that, it's... I don't want to sound dismissive by saying it's a classic Castlevania rock song, but it is. I like how the drums in some of those songs and that motif kind of comes back in later. As I said earlier, I did not play Curse of Darkness because after Lament of Innocence, I'm I'm not sure this is working right in 3D, but I very much enjoyed the soundtrack. This town looks, it's very gray.
It's Curse of Darkness is a better game than Lament of Innocence.
For sure.
But I also, but in a backwards way, I did not get terribly far in Curse of Darkness while I did finish Lament of Innocence many years ago. I think both of them are trying to, get a little bit. They're trying to be a PS2 action game in the vein of a Devil May Cry or God of War, but it's not really good at either of those. Mm-hmm. Curse of Darkness has you create monsters called innocent devils, and then there's monster summoning and leveling up, and there's a couple RPG systems in there. But I think it maybe, and it's a direct sequel to Castlevania 3: Dracula's Curse for the NES. But I think that maybe its position in the Castlevania canon is more for introducing Hector and Isaac to the animated series than they are for being a good game. Because it's an okay game that's just weird.
It's a significant step up from Lament of Innocence, but there's a lot of room to step up from Lament of Innocence. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did think, Hector was a really cool main character. Getting fleshed out in the Castlevania animated series is I will take this game just for what we got out of the series from Isaac and Hector.
At least we got that much out of it, right?
Exactly.
Did anything from Lament of Innocence make it into the show?
Oh, I don't think so. Lament of Innocence is a really super early Castlevania game. I think it's the one that takes place earliest in the timeline. And it ends with an origin story for Dracula, but I don't think the animated show borrowed from that, because it's about the first Belmont and the creation of Dracula, but then Lords of Shadow 1 and 2 have a different Dracula origin story. It's strange. Going through the Castlevania canon is challenging to fit everything in without breaking the rules that they made for themselves. But Curse of Darkness follows Dracula's Curse, and the animated show incorporates characters from Dracula's Curse and Curse of Darkness, including Trevor and Sifa and Alucard and Hector and Isaac. So it's kind of that part of it is consistent, but Curse of Darkness itself is a weird one because of how the action goes. There's not much Belmonts or whipping in it. But it's at least interesting. And better than Lament of Innocence. And this is a good song. I really, really like the percussion in this song. You could dismiss it as sort of normal rock percussion, but it really freaking thumps compared to we're gonna listen to music from a lot of DS sound software. and none of them can really have percussion this mighty.
See, now you guys have like somewhat sold me on this game, and I realize it's going for like around or more than $100 used. So that's unfortunate.
Yeah, it's a little uncommon, I think, but it is an interesting curiosity within the Castlevania oeuvre. Although I would recommend like every GBA and DS game ahead of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I'll do those first, or I'll finish those DS ones first.
And I would probably recommend, like I said, a Devil May Cry 3 or a God of War 2 ahead of Castlevania Curse of Darkness. But it's at least interesting, and but really its greatest contribution to the lore is giving us some characters to the animated series, which is excellent.
Yeah.
Was there a delay to the animated series? Because they mentioned that there was going to be another series, another season starring Richter.
Oh, I didn't actually know about that. I thought they were just done.
Happening.
Is that still happening? Because I know that one of the creators of the animated series basically left the project, but I don't know where it is right now.
Oh, that'd be cool, though.
I'd have to do some extra research, but
yeah, same here.
But it looks like that if that show does continue, it's going to be about the Rondo of Blood Symphony of the Night period, which is a couple hundred years after Dracula's Curse of Darkness.
How does Order of Ecclesia fit into that?
Order of Ecclesia takes place after that. The main character is Shanoa, who is she's a warrior for the church. But they're like the NPCs in the game are some trustworthy, some not trustworthy. Avoiding spoilers here, and she equips weapons instead of like weapons that you equip physically. She has glyphs on her back and each arm, and by equipping different glyphs or runes to your body, it gave you different powers and different weapon combinations. And she's just really cool. It's a very fun interpretation of Castlevania magic. It has outdoors and non-castle settings for most of the game, but then the last half or maybe third of the game is a proper Castlevania castle. And Wandering the Crystal Blue is what I call a Castlevania water song or cave song, because in a lot of Castlevania games, when you're in a cave or in an area with a lot of water, the music becomes much more chilled out. They'll give you cascading melodies like a waterfall. There's you probably know the Symphony of the Night song like that in the cave where the waterfall is. But I love the piano counter melody in Wandering the Crystal Blue, and the sort of main melody that is by these bigger strings. It's a really, really beautiful song. Michiru Yamane has performed it live a couple times. And it's great live, but I really like just how clean the piano is in the original soundtrack version. It also has an arranged version on the same album, but I listened to both, and I went with the disc 1 original. It's just, to me, like, this is one of the best songs in Order of Ecclesia, and is a absolute like platonic ideal of a Castlevania water song.
Platonic ideal. I like that.
I'm with you. Yeah, I haven't played much of Order of Ecclesia, but man, the music from it is all so good. It seems like it's got one of the stronger soundtracks out of all of the DS games from, every track that I've heard. And I'm glad that you picked this one, because we don't have any other real examples of, that water track, like you were saying. There are times when Castlevania can slow it down, even though we always think of it as a pretty fast-paced kind of a soundtrack.
Yeah, like none of us brought in chapel tracks or any like straight up horror tracks like the Abyss song in Ecclesia. But there are sort of archetypes to different Castlevania music, and in that the first two songs that Wes and I brought were both sort of front hall songs. The Order of Ecclesia song like that is called An Empty Tome, and it's awesome, and I almost brought that one today. But yeah, like cave songs, chapel songs,
clock
like
towers.
Clock towers that are always sort of the heavy song. Like horror songs that are usually in a deep cave or a secret lab or something. Like you notice patterns.
Which I guess is why, like, when I was listening, I'm like, having not played this one yet, I'm like, it kind of sounds like it's a water or a cave or a water cave or something, and that's exactly what it is.
That is exactly what it is. But if you've played more than one Castlevania game, you've probably been through a couple of water caves.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I can't think of what the Symphony of the Night one is that you mentioned earlier, but like, yes, like that sound, like I know that sound.
It's the one that goes ding, 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 ding,
Yes.
You know what I'm talking about.
Oh, I do.
I don't remember the name of the song, which is shameful. But there a lot of Castlevania games have water songs, and Wandering the Crystal Blue is one of my favorites. And I'm a little, I mean, disappointed is the wrong word. Mike and Wes and listeners, Castlevania Order of Ecclesia, I genuinely think is best in series or close to it. So it comes highly recommended, both from a soundtrack perspective and a video game perspective.
Well, then yell at Konami, tell them to make a DS collection next.
Yeah, please.
If they do that, I will be pre-ordering that thing the moment I physically can, because I really, really treasure the Advance and DS run of Castlevania games. And it will not shock you that I have like all of those on my Switch. Well, okay, I have the Castlevania Classic Collection and the Advanced Collection on Switch, and on PS4 I have the Requiem Collection and the Classic Collection.
Does your love stop at the DS? Because the 3DS had
what was
it called?
It had a Lords of Shadow spin-off.
Yeah.
I tried that once, but it is not a good video game.
No.
I only tried it. I didn't commit to a full purchase or a full playthrough. And there are the two Lords of Shadow games, which were both PS3, I think, maybe also 360. And the first one is okay, like not amazing, but it's an okay 3D action game. I heard the second one's better, but I only played a little bit of that. I didn't get very far.
You know, they feel kind of like they're following in the footsteps of Curse of Darkness and, you know, the PS2 games more than anything.
Really? Interesting.
Just in the way of like trying to be more about the action than the exploration, and trying to make everything work in 3D. And they do a better job of it than anyone else has, but that's, again, it's a low bar to trip over.
Well, and Castlevania Lords of Shadow 2 fetches a pretty high price on eBay, $15 whole.
Too rich for my blood.
Yeah, exactly. That's pretty spicy, but we'll see if it's worth it.
I mean, I think I know I could check this right now, but I don't want to make a bunch of noise with a keyboard. I think they're on PC, are they not? Am I just making that up?
Oh, I have no idea.
For some reason, I thought they released at least one of them on something a little more recent, but I could be wrong.
It sounds familiar. I don't know if it's the Mandela effect or not. But
I guess it could be. All right, well, whatever. We were looking stuff up before, so I have to know. I don't want to be like giving poor information to our podcast listeners who are going to be like, it's not on PC. What are you talking about?
No, you're right. It did have a PC version that was released about 3 years later, or at least the first Lords of Shadow does.
No, they're both on Steam.
They're both on Steam.
There you go.
I didn't make it up.
woo!
Granted, they're $40, not $15 like the one you found. So
I've got to think those prices get wrecked in Steam sales, though.
Yeah.
But the 3DS game is Lords of Shadow Mirror Fate, and I only tried that one. But it's between $15 and $25 on most used markets. Lords of Shadow 2 is the one that I don't have. This is the one that I don't have, and I'm currently contemplating if I want to get it on eBay or not.
This is a dangerous episode for you.
It really is. Well, no, it isn't that dangerous because I own most of the Castlevania games, including Curse of Darkness and the first Lords of Shadow. But the real dangerous thing was when we were. When we were playing Tales of Exilia for the podcast for Retro Encounter a little while ago, and I ended up going to a used game store and getting Tales of Exilia 2 for an exorbitant amount like a week later. But yeah, so being on these podcasts can be dangerous to your wallet, but I'm mostly okay for Castlevania because I own most of them. That's my own Dracula's curse of being a fanboy.
I do hope, now we mentioned it, like just before we move on, like I would love them to do a DS collection too, because they did what's in the first collection? Because there was a one before the Advanced collection. Is that just the older? Is that 1 through 4?
There's the Castlevania Requiem collection, which is Rondo of Blood and Symphony of the Night.
Oh yeah.
Then there is the Castlevania Classic collection, which is a bunch of the old school Castlevania games, most of the ones from the 80s and 90s, including the Game Boy ones, which is wild. But it does not have either of the N64 ones, and it does not have the PSP remake of Rondo. And then you have the Advanced Collection, which is the 3 Game Boy Advance Castlevania ones, but not the Advanced remake of Castlevania 1, but the 3 Metroidvania Castlevanias, plus the Super Nintendo version of Rondo of Blood, which was just called Dracula X in North America. it's not a great port. I mean, Rondo of Blood is better than Dracula X, but Dracula X is famously hard because the last couple boss fights are on multiple platforms, and if you get hit in the air, it's an instant kill. And it has SNES sound chip versions of Rondo of Blood tracks, which is not bad. It's actually kind of interesting, like having the sound reinterpreted that way. But so you can get almost every Castlevania game from those 3 collections, which are all on PS4, and all of them except Requiem are on Switch as well, with the exceptions of the 2 64 games and the DS games and Lords of Shadow 1 and 2 and the 3DS Lords of Shadow. But most of the Castlevania series is on those 3 PS4 collections.
That's pretty impressive, honestly. Like, so many of them are still accessible on like current systems, not even like a couple generations back.
Yeah, Konami's very good about making their older catalog available. Like they have a Contra collection that's extremely thorough, and arcade collections that have things like Centipede and the older Gradius games. Mm-hmm. Although the PSP Gradius collection I think is still locked to the PSP, which is sad. Oh, but they recently came out with a Cowabunga collection, which is all of their old Ninja Turtles games.
Yeah, I want to get that.
I've heard it's good, but so like Konami's very good at making their older games accessible to modern audiences, especially. I mean, shoot, we're getting the Suikoden 1 and 2 collection next year.
I could not be happier about that.
But they're not really in the business of making new games on their proprietary series.
Yeah.
Long sigh from the Konami fan. That's a little bit sad that there hasn't been a new Castlevania game in over a decade.
They're good with the back catalog. Future one, not looking so bright.
Hey, all I'm saying is just like give the Castlevania license to From Software and let them make a 3D Castlevania that's kind of like Elden Ring, and then people will lose their damn minds.
That would be something, huh?
Yeah, but I mean, I don't know. I don't think it's that useful an exercise to just do wild speculation that won't happen on a podcast. But
probably not, unless we did an episode about that.
It's a little fun. Yeah, it's a little fun. Unless the episode is about speculation and adaptation, then I don't know. Maybe we can cut this out. But it's true. A lot of the classic Castlevania catalog is available on modern systems.
Honestly, the thing that I can't stop thinking about from everything you said there is I completely forgot there was more than one on the N64.
Yeah, the second one is called I think Legacy of Darkness.
Oh, and
it's a different main character than Castlevania 64, but they reuse some of the same spaces.
Mm-hmm.
It was the main character is a werewolf. He's in Castlevania Judgment. I forget his name. But wow. I do not have a high opinion of the N64 Castlevania games.
Yeah, I'm guessing we're not going to see those on the Switch Online service, but then again, we might.
Hey, if they want to do a true 3D Castlevania collection, like bring it 64, Legacy of Darkness, Lament of Innocence, and Curse of Darkness. That would be a real weird collection that I would buy in 10 seconds.
Well, maybe it'll happen. Hey, speaking of Lament of Innocence, do we want to talk about our last 2 songs today?
Heck yeah, we do.
Do we ever?
Yes. All right. So several episodes back, I brought on one of my favorite Lament of Innocence tracks. So here is my next favorite, which is the Anti-Soul Mysteries Lab, which is like, I mean, even just the title of the song I adore, because it's just, I don't even know what an anti-soul is, but I want to. So yeah, after that, and then Wes you have your other song today.
I'm bringing along Ebony Wings, originally from Order of Ecclesia, but I'm actually bringing the Harmony of Despair version. So we get to talk about Harmony of Despair.
Yeah, and I'm very glad you did. It's a really interesting choice. So, all right, let's go listen to the Anti-Soul Mysteries Lab and Ebony Wings. So I said earlier that Anti-Soul Mysteries Lab is one of my, 2 or 3 favorite songs from Lament of Innocence, because as forgettable as the game was for me, the soundtrack is definitely not. And as opposed to the town and some other imagery I looked up for Curse of Darkness, I at least think the lab at least looks kind of cool. I mean, I don't really have any fond memories of playing through it, but that's okay. It's got some color at least. But for the song, like the like relentless beat of this, and those weird like vocals, like that chattering vocal like that pops in here and there, I just think is very strange and fascinating to me. I'm not sure if there's a technical term for those. There's I don't know if anyone, this is a little off topic, but it's a Square game, but if anyone ever played Einhander on PS1, that soundtrack has a lot of that in like certain songs, and I just think it's an odd little thing to include.
I remember seeing Einhander around, but I have not played it.
Oh, I love that game. I don't know. I mean, I think it's been mostly forgotten compared to things like, Darius, which like Darius continues to live on, but I think a lot of people have forgotten Einhander, but I had a lot of fun with it.
I sometimes mix up Einhander with Air Guys, even though I don't think they're the same kind of game.
Definitely not. One's a fighting game.
Not exactly.
Yeah.
One had Cloud in it, and one didn't. So
the reason I knew about Air Guys because one of my friends got it because Cloud and Tifa are in it.
I mean, that was smart of them. That was like good cross promotion. Maybe if Cloud was in Einhander, people would still remember it. But anyway, yes, an unrelated game with a similar thing going on in some of its songs, but a good soundtrack. Unfortunately, it does not have whips, and we're talking about whips and other weapons today. So, but besides the chatter, like this other like voice or like choir thing that comes in once in a while just to be like creepy and weird. Like there's just like all these interesting layers of sounds and music in this song that just keeps, I don't know, it just stays interesting all the way through. So I think it's always really stuck with me. It's just a really memorable song from this game. So yeah, like the other one, my other favorite one is the Lament of Innocence main theme, which, like, of course, you can go on YouTube or whatever and listen to it. But if you also want to listen to it on our show, I would recommend listening to episode 76 of Rhythm Encounter, because we brought on the Smash Brothers Ultimate arrangement of Lament of Innocence. So that was a very fun episode.
There's a lot of good Castlevania arrangements in Super Smash Brothers Ultimate, because in the same. I mean, the game has a playable Simon and Richter Belmont, but they also include music. Either some original tracks and some remix tracks, totaling I think in like around 20 or so. Like there's a bunch of good Castlevania remixes and tracks in Super Smash Ultimate.
Yeah, there's a lot. Like for a while I actually went through and listened to them for this episode, because I thought about maybe doing this one and something from Smash before I landed on the Curse of Darkness song.
I also considered one specific song from Smash Ultimate for this episode, but ultimately decided not to bring it on. It was from
Smash ultimately decided not to.
Correct. And the weird vocals you were talking about, like the really low chorus, it reminds me of the Winkies from The Wizard of Oz. Did you remember the green skinned soldiers that go oh, like that's.
Yes, was not expecting that reference, but yes.
Yeah, but that was what I thought of with the really weird chorus in this song from Lament of Innocence, and it's weird. It is Yamane trying to be a little bit. I mean, dance club is the wrong answer, but it's less gothic rock and more like just kind of I don't know.
Like industrial sort of?
Yeah, like industrial rock. I mean, the percussion and the I guess you would call it organ in it suggests that, but it's more industrial and less classic Castlevania to me. But it is a cool song. I did play through all of Lament of Innocence. It's one of the few Castlevania games that does not have Dracula as the final boss. But Leon Belmont, I mentioned this earlier, is the first Belmont in this version of the timeline. But I don't think it's like as an action game from that era. I think it's a little average. But definitely, I was more interested in the Game Boy Advance and DS Castlevanias of the era.
This song specifically, though, really does stand out to me as being an eerie song, because it so weirdly mixes in, like, there is a little bit of dance to it. There is that industrial to it. There are the gothic pieces and the low singing and everything. And all of that meshes together to be kind of unsettling to listen to. Like, none of these things should belong together. So listening to it, like, you almost get anxious listening to it, which feels like the intent.
Well, I didn't mean to make you feel anxious, so I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm a wreck now.
Oh, wow. What have I done? Oh, wow. Like, I just killed the entire show with that even. So I was also trying to find a segue to me like turning you into a wreck of anxiousness into ebony wings, but I didn't. I didn't have it.
So how do we transition this over?
Yeah,
You know what doesn't make me anxious?
What's that, Wes?
Playing Castlevania with friends.
Oh, I love Castlevania with friends, and honestly, to understand the brilliance of this version of Ebony Wings, you kind of have to understand the game, because I'm guessing a good number of our listeners probably have not heard of or played Harmony of Despair, at least one of those two things, because it's this crazy, like, 6-player online multiplayer Castlevania game that's, it's based on runs. You go in with, up to 5 other people, and you run through this still pretty large but a very streamlined, action-focused version of a Dracula's castle or something like that. And the goal is to get to the boss, usually in the center, maybe always in the center. It's been a hot minute. But that makes this a much more fast-paced version of Castlevania, because you've got a bunch of people. You're scrambling everywhere. You're trying to find the correct path to where you're going. And the whole time you're also scrambling for loot, because loot is consistent across runs, and that's kind of the goal of the game. So their whole soundtrack is made up of arrangements of other Castlevania songs, arranged into like the hardest rock they could possibly get out of the tunes that they had, to kind of keep up that pace and make it feel like it belongs in this game. And I think they do a really phenomenal job. That you've got familiar melodies, but they do really feel like they all fit into a cohesive whole. And Ebony Wings is just, I don't know, it's one of the best songs in there. It's another Order of Ecclesia jam, and I absolutely adore it.
Yeah, in Order of Ecclesia, Ebony Wings fits the sort of heavy archetype, where I think it plays in like the ramparts or like a specific wing of the castle. But it's a slightly crunchy Castlevania song, but then they ratchet up the crunch a lot in the Harmony of Despair version, where it's high energy but just has more thump and more electric guitar in it. And I've played Harmony of Despair, I think maybe twice. It's interesting as a concept, because like it doesn't only remix Castlevania music tracks. It's a bunch of classic Castlevania characters whose experience levels and loot are saved in between runs or missions or whatever you want to call them. So it's basically sort of like a Castlevania endless grind that mostly works, but wasn't hugely popular. I mean, I think the fans were more excited about the music than about playing the game for the most part, especially since the grind was a little slow.
Yeah, it was definitely one of those that was a lot more fun if one or two of the people you were playing with were friends, to kind of keep the grind feeling a little bit less painful, because you'd have someone to talk to. Because yeah, it took you a long time to get someone strong.
Yeah, I never played it. I remember the reception at the time being sort of mixed, because, obviously people would like a new Castlevania, and this was not really a classic one, but no. Conceptually it sounds really interesting, and as long as, like you said, you have an actual friend to play with. So I think you can still get it, right?
Yeah, it's up there on both Xbox and PlayStation right now.
Okay.
I think they're part of the free Game Pass and PlayStation Plus at some tier.
Oh, even better.
So it might have a little bit more.
I think it came out around when the PS3 and PS4 were when the PS4 was pretty new. So I think you could get it on both systems, but maybe not the PS3 anymore. I have not looked into this in several years, so I could definitely be off on that. But I believe it is still around and functional.
Yeah, it sounds interesting. But again, like you said, if nothing else, the music. So, we talked earlier about Portrait of Ruin and like the two slightly different versions of songs on some of those albums. So I did the same thing here, where I was like, okay, I'll listen to this version of Ebony Wings, and I listened to the other one, and boy, what a difference. Like the original one it's still a great song, and it's fun. I like the melody. But like the guitar and like just the arrangement in this one is just awesome. Like, I wanted to listen to more of the soundtrack. Like, I'm not sure how the other arrangements sound like compared to the original, but like they put some effort into this one, so it's just great. And I think it has the right energy and feel for, you know, this like more fast-paced, action-oriented game.
But let me tell you, one game I've played more than Harmony of Despair that also has some pretty amazing remixes of Castlevania tracks, but it is definitely not an RPG, is the Wii fighting game Castlevania Judgment. I don't know how familiar
I
you
was
are
wondering
with
if
that
that was going to come
Oh,
up.
wow,
yeah,
that one.
I almost brought a Judgment remix into this episode, but ultimately Super Smash ultimately decided not to. But yeah, that game is a Castlevania fighting game with a truly heinous art style it's not a good video game, but it has a bunch of awesome remixes of Castlevania tracks. Shinoa's theme in that game is a hard rock version of Empty Tone with a flute singing the lead as the lead voice, and it's bad game, great soundtrack, worth the YouTube safari. Harmony of Despair, better game than Judgment. It's definitely weird, also worth the YouTube safari.
Worth asking, since you brought up the art, do you hate it due to the artist or due to the fit with Castlevania?
The sheer weirdness of it. Like I don't know why they turned oh shoot, I think it was Trevor into like an S&M boy.
Yeah.
And they like it's like Sifa and Shinoa look really weird. It's the style doesn't bother me. It's just the very strange, unsettling interpretations of a lot of these characters. Like I can't think of a single character that looks better in Judgment except for maybe the weirdo from Castlevania 64 Legacy of Darkness.
And it's fascinating too because Takeshi Obata is a beloved artist, like
it's the Death Note guy, yeah.
But it's such a weird fit because all of the designs were like, we're going to make this alt universe version of your favorite characters.
It's a real weird one. I do not recommend playing Castlevania Judgment, especially since every character, to see their real ending, you have to beat arcade mode twice, which is not how I would do it. But the remixed music from Castlevania Judgment, extremely worth it. A lot of it's very heavy. Sort of metal influenced, but they're all really good. It's my favorite version of Mad Forest from Castlevania 3.
I'm amazed how many Castlevania games I forgot existed that you have reminded me of tonight.
You forgot Castlevania 3, the one that introduces Alucard?
No, not that one. Not that one.
Well, when they come up with a Castlevania 3D collection that has 64 Legacy of Darkness, Lament of Innocence, and Curse of Darkness in it, you will be uncomfortably reminded of all four.
I mean, I'm really hoping the DS collection comes before that does.
If we get that before DS, there will be riots.
Yeah.
They can have that be the 3DS games plus Mirror Fate, just to bring it up to an even Mount Rushmore of 4.
Yeah. I mean, that would fit. Unless they throw in Judgment as a bonus game just to really mess with people.
I mean, a DS collection is the logical next collection for Konami to do. I've heard that it's doing a DS port to other systems is a little challenging because there's no way to sort of fake touchscreen integration other than removing and replacing it.
Yeah.
But I think this was like from comments about the mobile version of World Ends With You is where I read that. But I would welcome a collection like that, but maybe it doesn't have to include Castlevania Judgment.
Yeah, I think like the touch and also the dual screen component like really throws people off. Like how do you incorporate that?
There was a recent interview with some Team Asano people, the group that does Bravely Default and Octopath Traveler. And they mentioned about how like the unique challenges of what it would take for a modern port of Bravely Default. That also seemed to have them hinting at a possible port of it. They were like saying it would be really hard to do this and this, but this is how we would do it in a way that made me wonder if they were going to do a Bravely Default port, just to switch your PS5 or something. But there are unique challenges in porting DS and 3DS games, but I wish they would find out some way to do it so that more people can play Order of Ecclesia.
Yeah, definitely. All right, well, I think that is basically our show then. So this was a lot of fun. I'm sure by now everyone listening has noticed that we like bumped our schedule around a little bit. Not technically so this could release on Halloween, but it worked out very well. So I'm happy that worked out that way. And to give credit where it's due, that was Sollosi's idea. So thank you for that.
Hey, well, I think this episode was one of my cards that I made on our ideas board like 2 or 3 years ago. So I am extremely chuffed that we finally got around to making an all Castlevania episode. It's I love Castlevania as a series, and I think that it has a really unique and exciting collection of tunes around these games, and I'd very deliberately brought on 2 of the 3DS games to this episode because I think that the DS run of Castlevania is like they were definitely popular in the time, but I think now that it's been 15 years since, or maybe 14 years since Order of Ecclesia, I think that they've become a little overlooked, and I would love to bring as much shine as I possibly can to them.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. So those are excellent choices. Let's do some outro stuff here. So in a couple weeks, this also worked out exceptionally well by adjusting our schedule. In a couple weeks, we're doing an episode about Pokemon music, which is going to land right before Pokemon Scarlet and Violet come out. So again, kind of a coincidence, but I'm happy with the timing there. So that'll be fun. And we have not announced what's happening after that yet, but we will do that in the next episode. So in the meantime, look forward to Pokemon in a couple weeks. So if you would like to send us feedback about the show or topic ideas or whatever you want to let us know, you can email us at music@rpgfan.com. If you have feedback for me, I'm not sure what you would email me besides the show or besides show comments, but hey, you can reach me at mike@rpgfan.com. Sollosi, what's the best way for people to reach you?
The best way to reach me is probably Twitter. I am at The Real Monsoon most of the time, at Evoker for Dogs at other times, and in RPG Fans Discord, I am Monsoon Mike.
Cool. And how about you, Wes?
Twitter's the best way, at Wes Iliff. Clean and simple.
So easy. So if you enjoyed this show, I definitely encourage you to check out RPG Fans' other podcasts. Every other Monday, we have Random Encounter, which is generally new stuff, news, reviews. Sometimes we talk about features on RPG Fan. So be sure to check that out. And as I always do when you're here, Sollosi, I'm going to let you plug Retro Encounter.
Right. Retro Encounter is another one of RPG Fans' podcasts. It is a weekly show released usually every Thursday, and it's about all kinds of RPG topics, but mostly it's we pick a specific game every month and play that game and discuss it over 2 episodes. In October, we did a month of adventure games, so we did 4 different episodes on 4 adventure games. Secret of Monkey Island, The Wolf Among Us, Broken Age, and The Quarry. And coming up next month, or November, which is, only a day away or so, if you're listening to this on time, we're doing 3 episodes on the Mass Effect trilogy. So an episode on Mass Effects 1, 2, and 3. And listen to Retro Encounter. We have episodes on Castlevania Aria of Sorrow and 2 episodes on Castlevania Symphony of the Night.
Oh, I guess that is a whole bunch of links that we'll include in the show notes for this one too. So
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, why not? I want people to listen to those. I mean, if you listen to this or don't want more Castlevania, then I don't know what to tell you, but I imagine a lot of people will. So be sure to check those out and whatever else ends up in our show notes for this episode. If you enjoyed the show, please review us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, wherever it is you listen. We would appreciate the support. Tell your friends, tell your mom, tell your trick-or-treaters if you're listening to this, on Halloween. Be like, hey, here is your Reese's Peanut Butter Cup. And also, have you heard Rhythm Encounter or Retro Encounter yet? I'm not sure if this is the guerrilla marketing plan that's going to work for us, but you know what? I'll take it. So to fully close out our show, we have a bonus track today from one of you, and I still don't know what it is. So what are we closing with?
Right. Well, I mean, I made it very clear how much of a Castlevania fanboy I am on this episode. So I picked a bonus track. All of the songs that we did are from modern Castlevania games, from Symphony of the Night or later. But there are a couple pillars of Castlevania music that date back all the way to the NES. Like we talked about, we mentioned a couple of them. There's Vampire Killer and Wicked Child and Beginning from Castlevania 3. And all of those have remixes in the later Castlevania games that RPG Fan does cover. So I decided for the bonus track, we're going to take one of those like original old school Castlevania songs, and I'll share with you my favorite cover of it. The song is Bloody Tears from Castlevania 2, secretly the first Castlevania nonlinear game, because that's the one where Simon has to run around town and talk to NPCs and collect Dracula's body parts and solve the mystery. But and the version of Bloody Tears was arranged by Tetsuya Fuzuki, who is a guitarist for a band called L'Arc-en-Ciel, and he teamed up with 3 other musicians named, where did I have this written down? Named Kaede, Jill, and Reo, who play lead guitar, violin, and keyboard, for a really, really kick-ass cover of Bloody Tears. So if you just look up Bloody Tears Castlevania Tetsuya Fuzuki on YouTube, you can find the very cool music video of it. But yes, please enjoy my favorite cover of the Castlevania 2 classic, Bloody Tears.
Well, that is a fantastic choice. I can't wait to listen because I had not heard this myself either. So thanks for that. And that's it. We're going to close out with Bloody Tears. Thanks for being here, both of you. And thank you, everyone, for listening. We'll see you next time. Bye.
I can put a picture of Hector the Booty Inspector in the chat. I mean, his name is just Hector, but I did say, like, if I ever see him sniff someone's butt, he's going to be Hector the Booty Inspector, because that was one of the guys on New Kids on the Block. There he is.
Oh, how old is he?
He's about 7 weeks.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so right around 2 months, maybe a little bit less. But he is a little bitey. So he's just because, he wants to sniff everything and then nibble on everything.
Mm-hmm.
But he's very playful and has a very sweet personality. I can't wait to get to know him better.
Yeah, very cute.
He is very cute. But he does the whole like whites of his eyes in the back of his head, giant mouth going ha kind of thing. And he has those tiny puppy needle teeth that you never quite get used to.
Yep.
Good old Hector the Booty Inspector.